If you're watching this video right now, I'd imagine you're one of three types of people. The first is someone who's been thinking about Transformers and wants to get into it more but doesn't really know where to start or how any of this works. The second type are people who have to put up with someone who's really into this. So maybe you're hoping to be a little bit less lost on the basics while possibly even impressing them with what you do know. Good for you. And the third type are the existing fans who want to learn more and even just make sure that their bases are covered. Because let's face it, out of the 40 years of Transformers with thousands of figures, hundreds of comics, dozens of shows, and 10 movies and counting, it's kind of impossible to ever find just an overview of the basics, as in the useful basics that nobody took the time to explain, or the how-tos that you're left doing on your own even though you've always assumed that there's a better way to do it. After all, you can't Google questions you don't know to ask. Oh, there's also a secret fourth type, which are the fans who think that they know everything, so they're really just dropping in here to see if there's anything that can be corrected. So, how's it going, fellas? A little bit awkward, but I do in fact see you. So, yeah, enjoy the view. So, I think we need a video that covers the most important parts of everything, from the terminology that we use and the lore that got us here, to the practical stuff that you can't find in wiki articles, like shopping tips and collecting advice. No matter what you're here for, or how much you do or don't know, this will be your complete guide to becoming the ultimate Transformers fan. Alright, let's start with the basics everyone needs to know. In its absolute simplest form, everything within the Transformers brand falls into one of two general categories: the classic G1 style or the movieverse style. See, the original Transformers from the 80s looked like this, and we call this Generation 1 or G1. They started off as Japanese toys made by Takara Tomy before Hasbro then bought the rights to bring it here in the US with its own animated show. So the next 20 years of comic spin-offs and rebooted shows were all grounded by these same G1 design cues in some way. At least they were, up until 2007 when the first live-action movie by Michael Bay came out in theaters.
Before time began, there was the cube.
The new redesigns in this movie looked so unfamiliar that it created this rift across the brand moving forward, not just for the media, but also for any of their connected toy lines. And the new second half of this rift was nicknamed the Bayverse. They look like this, so you can probably imagine why the two types of fans don't always see eye to eye.
The design started getting out on the internet. Read some of the posts that said they want to hunt me down and kill me. I had a couple of those, but it was the most downloaded teaser ever. And I'm like, that's starting to look really cool.
These days, it's more commonly called the Movieverse instead of the Bayverse because technically Michael Bay left after doing the first 5 movies, and the most recent 2 made by other directors have started to bring back some G1 design elements for a kind of a hybrid look between the two. Either way, from that very first film, Hasbro recognized how radical this redesign was, so when they started releasing the toys in tandem with that movie, they also continued making the G1 styled figures as an alternative. That G1-esque toy line, as well as any toy line leading up to that point, has since been nicknamed the Generations toy lines. They've continued making these Generations figures separately from the movie figures to this day. And every year the Generations line takes on a different title, like Titan's Return or War for Cybertron, but right now in 2026 it's called Age of the Primes. Now, fair warning, even though most fans do generally refer to these as the Generations lines, there's always going to be that one guy who has to remind you that technically the current movie-styled figures are also a part of the Generations category, and that's because technically they're correct. For whatever reason, Hasbro's decided that just about every modern toy line should go under the Generations banner, so we honestly just ignore that since it's always been our cultural word for specifically the G1 styled figures dating back to the 80s. And we will keep doing this while putting up with that one guy who has to be difficult in every argument. As time went on, those original fans kept getting older while teens joined in collecting and young kids had to be considered too, so there was a lot of these different age groups to address, and as a result, the 2 basic themes have gotten split off into their own subdivisions of kid-friendly and adult-oriented lines. The easiest way that I think to look at this in its current state is that any TV show or movie release coming out now will have a corresponding toy line to advertise it, and those toy lines these days are largely made for the young kids. Just about everything else is collector-focused. Problem is, none of that really means anything if you don't know what it looks like on store shelves. If you walk into a Target or Walmart Transformers aisle, you'll find some dark packaging, and then some brighter packaging. Those bright ones are mostly the toy lines aimed at young kids. You'll know it when you see it. The majority of us who have graduated first grade will be interested in the dark boxes. And those figures fall into one of the 2 themes that we talked about, G1 or Movieverse. Now, recently, Hasbro made a big change by packing both of these styles into the same unified box designs, which they had never done before. So just know that if the box does not have any type of logo from a pre-existing movie or TV show on it, this means it's a figure from the current generation's line. And if it does have one of those logos, it means that figure is screen accurate to whatever that media is. So Transformers Devastation means it's from the Devastation game, The Last Knight means it's from the Last Knight movie. These are all a part of the Studio Series line, and the Studio Series line was originally meant for remaking just the live-action movie characters, but since then, it's expanded to include characters from every piece of media. So you'll find some Movieverse mixed in there with video game characters and then even some 80s characters, even though G1 is what the Generations line was meant for. But point is, that's the difference between the screen-accurate Studio Series line and the more strictly G1-based Generations line, which again is right now called Age of the Primes. All that being said, after this video, just fully prepare to never see any of these toy line names spelled out in a comment section again, because this fandom probably wouldn't maintain a steady pulse overnight without the sustained presence of our holy cornerstone and everlasting fountain of bread and water: acronyms. Life is short, and now you can spare yourself a precious second of it every time you abbreviate arduous phrases like Legacy United into TFLU, thus gaining back a precious second of life, which you can use a week later when you're reading a random comment trying to remember what TFLU stands for. And while we're at it, let's go through some of the basics. SS stands for Studio Series, the screen-accurate toy line that we just talked about, and MP stands for Masterpiece, which is Takara Tomi's larger premium toy line that I haven't mentioned. They're made with all the best engineering and paint, and they're so expensive that they only make a few each year exclusively online. Kind of a random but important note, by the way, each Masterpiece is given an assigned number following the MP abbreviation in order of their release. So the first ever Masterpiece figure was labeled 1, then the next was 2, and up from there. It's kind of a regular Takara Tomy practice where they seem to like to number a lot of their figures within different toy lines. That's also why older Studio Series figures had the number assigned to them following the SS acronym on the box before they discontinued it there. Oh, no, there's no SS anywhere to be seen. It's nowhere on the box, apparently, which is exactly how prominently this fandom uses acronyms that I was genuinely convinced into thinking that they used it officially. It's not. Whoops. But that same numbering technique still applies to the MPM line. MPM stands for Masterpiece Movie, which is the same as the Masterpiece line, but for the characters only from the live action movies. They've also recently rebranded the line, so there's like different letters at the end of it. Just know that if it has MP or MPM in it, then it's going to be a part of that same line.
You keep using the word. I don't think it means what you think it means.
Chug is a very common acronym used in the same way that Generations is, where it broadly refers to the G1-esque figures. They're kind of interchangeable terms. It stands for Classics, Henkei, Universe, Generations, which is a pretty outdated term since those are the names of toy lines from 20 years ago. So I'd like to petition for us to add every recent Generations line to that acronym, right? Like, why are we picking favorites? Gwomps the Chocolate. Gwomps the Chocolate figures. There's also Chuckle-Ape Guts, but GPS stands for Gold Plastic Syndrome. Back in the day, a ton of figures with golden plastic parts would crumble and break over time. This isn't really a problem anymore, though, because it turns out that it was never about the gold coloring and actually from the swirly plastic compound that's been phased out since the early 2000s. So GPS is no longer a modern problem. CPS is an organization I hope none of us have any personal run-ins with, but it also stands for Clear Plastic Syndrome. Clear Plastic Syndrome is the intuition of every collector that if you can see through a part, it's probably less durable. And that is correct, because clear plastic is in fact more brittle and is made for some serious QC nightmares over the years. Yet for some reason, Hasbro's only doubled down on using it more with their recent figures. Also, QC stands for Quality Control. If you buy a figure with a loose hinge that won't click into vehicle mode properly, you'd probably say that it has some pretty bad QC. It can be really annoying and ruin an otherwise amazing figure, so I'm actually going to show you how to fix the most common QC issue that everyone's bound to run into at some point: loose joints. Sorry, fun fact. The Autobot and Decepticon symbols were originally based off of the designs of G1 Prowl and Soundwave's head sculpts. At least that's what we'd like to think that they are. Turns out in either case, there's actually no proof of this outside of just observational rumors. Something you might notice is a little bit of a trend around here. The designer of the symbols did have the original Takara Tomy figures in hand when he was designing them, so it is possible, just not factual. And I guess now also seems about a random time as any for me to just give the blanket statement that absolutely nothing that I show in this video is sponsored or affiliated in any way. I haven't touched a dime from these companies, and just as importantly, I don't have any working relationship with any of them by accepting free items for reviews. Matter of fact, I just decided against having a sponsor in this video entirely because I wanted to remove any perceived biases or conflict of interest with the products that I recommend. So a little bit later, I will spend a minute just hyping up the launch of my new Patreon page for anyone who wants a closer look behind the scenes. But for right now, we got some loose joints we gotta fix. Let's do that. Any moving part on a figure will either utilize clicky ratchet joints or some kind of smooth friction joints. And there's 3 common methods used to tighten those friction joints. You should only ever use one of these, but I'm going to go through all 3. The first one is toilet paper. Some people resort to the option they already have lying around, which means stuffing tiny shreds of toilet paper into the hinge of your favorite character. Please kindly remove it and promise him it won't happen again. The second option is for those people who clearly didn't get enough energy from their 8 shots of espresso this morning and consequently decided that the only rush of adrenaline they can even feel anymore is by supergluing their collectibles. On one hand, congrats, he can now hold that pose you wanted. On the other, I hope it's a really cool pose because your figure is now superglued. After you stopped crying, head to Walmart and buy a new copy of the figure, and while you're there, pick up a container of quick shine floor polish so you can proceed to the third and only good technique. Next, order a little eyedropper bottle from Amazon, then fill the dropper with your newly acquired polish, drink the rest, but save a little at the bottom for refills that you might need in 5 to 7 years, then grab a napkin and your figure. Quick note, Pledge Brand always had the best polish, but we live in a cruel world where it was discontinued and this is the next best option. So next up, apply a small drop of that floor polish to the exposed hinge and then just work it around for a good 30 seconds. And because it takes so long to fully dry, my advice is just to go easy on that first try. You'll be good to mess around with the figure once it's sat for a few hours, but I'd avoid making any final judgment about the tightness until a few days go by. I always have a paper towel on hand just in case some of the polish trickles down the figure, and no, your t-shirt will not cut it. Floor polish is comically sticky and it craves nothing more than a taste of your shirt. So don't fall for its trap. You know what it doesn't crave though? Metal. For some reason, die-cast joints just cannot be treated. They're always going to loosen right back to where they were, especially if we're talking die-cast on die-cast. Also, die-cast means metal. Adult collectors love their die-cast parts, which you'll only ever find these days in the masterpiece level figures. Sunbow, or sunbow, I don't know which one, is a word used to describe a specific type of G1 accuracy. The very first G1 cartoon was animated by a company called Sunbow, so whenever current figures are excessively simple and dead set on looking exactly like those cartoon models, people call that the Sunbow look. Parts formers is a nickname for any figures that have to be separated into multiple parts to complete its transformation. Shell forming is when a majority of the vehicle shell gets folded onto the robot back, often creating what we call a backpack. And kibble is any vehicle part still showing on the robot mode of a figure. Sometimes kibble can be screen accurate, but more often it's used to negatively describe the inaccurate junk, like a backpack. It is generally expected that the higher the size class of the figure, the less it should fall back on these corner cutting methods to engineer the transformation. So, yeah. What exactly is the deal with these size classes? Okay, so size classes are just an official way of saying price points. Hasbro established a handful of these price points and then gave them each a name, so each new figure is released at one of those price points. And right off the bat, there's no reasoning to the names that they give these sizes, they're kind of just random words that you'll learn to remember. For example, this is a core class. Core class figures cost $10 and they're pretty simple little guys. This is the next size up called a deluxe class. Figures released in this scale cost $28 and clock in just a few inches bigger. Then there's the $43 Voyager, and you can probably see where the pricing ladder is moving up to leader class for $60, a commander class for $100, and the biggest size class not even sold in most stores, the Titan. These different size classes used to be all about how big the figure is, right? So the more you spend, the bigger it'll be. But these days, it's a bit more nuanced and confusing because it's more about how complex the engineering is or how many accessories it packs in. So really a lot of intangible stuff that makes it harder to weigh its value. What a coincidence. It's why you might hear some people saying phrases like, this figure is just a deluxe size Voyager. They're not saying it's a Voyager with special deluxe edition features the way it sounds. They're saying that it's a Voyager class that's as small as a deluxe class figure below it. And you'll sometimes even hear, this is a Voyager size leader. Same concept. Okay, so the size class names are a little bit random, but other than that, it's just a pricing ladder that's pretty straightforward, right? I mean, what's up with all the confusion? Problem is, what if I told you that 20 years ago, this $10 core class used to be called a Scout class, which was later renamed to be Commander class in 2011, and then changed again, this time to Legends class, both names which, by the way, have at some point been given to other price points over the years, and then thrown a brief time throughout 2019 when this class was replaced with a 2-pack of smaller figures for the same $10, and it wasn't until after all that that they most recently brought back this 4-inch figure at the same price and renamed it to the Core class, before discontinuing it altogether just last year. So yeah, this doesn't actually exist in stores anymore, at least not currently, but by the time you're watching this, they might have brought it back for $11 and renamed it as the Energon class. Or what if they brought it back for $13 or $15? At what point does it stop being considered a return from core class and just a new thing entirely, even if it's the same exact size? See, that last part is the real 1-2 punch that throws this neat little timeline into complete chaos for most people. It's the prices combined with shrinkflation. Not only are a bunch of the size classes getting renamed while some of them get entirely discontinued, discontinued periodically, but as those figure prices go up over the years, all their sizes have come down, which really blurs the lines between them looking back. Especially since 2021, price hikes have gotten so drastic that a deluxe now costs as much as a Voyager above it did about 5 years ago. And for those prices, most people probably couldn't even pick out what figure belongs to a given size class while lined up on a desk anymore. That being said, here's the important takeaway. Throughout this entire mess of analytics, notice these 3 constant lines that carry all the way unbroken from 2005. We're gonna get rid of everything else for just a second, because I call these the big 3. No matter what comes and goes, these are basically the backbone of the size classes that have always been there in stores and will likely always be there moving forward. The Deluxe, the Voyager, and the Leader. At very least, those 3 are worth memorizing. This is super random, but just a few years ago, I made a video about displaying your collection on a budget. It's been really killing me because it wasn't until right after I released that video that I finally found a really good solution to displaying some of your figures away from the dust that didn't cost like a fortune. And it's these shoe bins. I found mine on Amazon as purse bins, but yeah, I guess they're selling them at Walmart now, which is pretty cool. They don't look super fancy or anything, but they work well and you can use them either stacked upright or sideways. Also, turns out that these displays are, at least mine, are the perfect size to fit 2 of these standard comic issue copies behind. Side by side is the backdrop, like a little mini wallpaper. And it fills out that background. It looks really sick. Just like absolutely everybody else on the planet right now, I'd like some of your money, please, and I've got some real devious plans to get it. Or not, because I also just figured out that Patreon apparently allows a free member tier, so I'm gonna be doing that too. Honestly though, I have put off doing anything like this for such a long time because I refuse to start one just for the sake of it, and I happen to think enough YouTubers milk their audience as it is, but over the last few months, I've cooked up something that I'm actually really excited for you guys to join if you're interested in supporting my work. I've always kept things very tightly under wrap about my videos before they come out publicly, but now on my Patreon, I'm gonna start sharing regular inside looks behind the scenes during the productions. Between the scripting and the film production to the editing and the visual effects, as a one-man crew, I go through some pretty crazy things to get the videos looking the way that you see them, and I like to film just about everything practically. So a lot of those little slice of life production updates I can't really post here to YouTube because it'll affect my pull on the algorithm, so I've actually decided I'm gonna post most of those on my Patreon for both the paid and the free members. And for the paid members, I'm gonna start providing some of the unpolished edits before the video comes out and then some deleted scenes after the video comes out. Oh, and I'm finally gonna have a way to share a really sick custom collection of 4K wallpapers that I'm hoping to add to as much as possible, plus some 3D printable files for a certain upgrade kit that you may or may not recognize from a recent video that I won't spoil. If you know, you know. And some people watching might have even noticed that the charts and graphs that I custom designed in this video are a little bit of a simplified view just for general audiences, so on the Patreon, I'm gonna have the full download version of those charts, but with the expanded details. I'd love for everyone to get a copy of that who wants one, so those are also gonna be free for as kind of like a welcome gift. And that's just the beginning. I'm really excited for you guys to get a better look at this, seeing a little bit more behind the scenes of some of the insane stuff that I haven't been able to share up until now. Please check it out if you guys are wanting to support the channel and help keep the lights on for these productions where YouTube seems a little bit desperate to shut them off right now. And if not, just subscribing here would be a massive help. That's enough yapping. Back to the video. Okay, TT stands for Takara Tomy, which some people just call Takara, and Hastalk is a nickname people use to combine Hasbro and Takara Tomy into the same name since they both own custody over the Transformers brand. Oh, and here's a few more acronyms you can chew on. AOE, TLK, BBM, ROTB. Don't bother remembering any of those because just about every Transformers movie or media has their own acronym that write themselves for the most part. You'll catch on to any acronyms that represent parts of the franchise you care about. So just know that if you ever see a new one in the wild that you can't make sense of, it's likely just a toy line or a show that came out 15 years ago. Yes, you'll always find new ones that are confusing. No, it won't ever stop. And I just found out that MTMTE isn't a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles thing. I guess it's the name of an older comic series called More Than Meets the Eye. If you perhaps detected a little hint of fear in my voice at the mention of comics, you'd be correct. See, the comic book landscape around here is a hellish one. Not because they're bad though, they're actually really quite good, yet the publishers would rather sniff lead fumes through their eyeballs than let a casual newcomer like ourselves figure that out. So, if you don't mind me taking 60 seconds to save you a week of research, here's the rundown. Over the past 40 years, the Transformers comic rights have belonged to 4 different publishing companies, the most recent now being Skybound. Skybound just finished releasing the first main story in their new universe spread across across 24 issues. What's an issue? Well, the hierarchy of Skybound's comic-size terminology goes as follows: issues, volumes, books, collections, compendiums. Issues, often written as a number symbol, are like chapters of a book, and Skybound releases one Transformers issue every month. After 6 issues come out, they compile those 6 issues into one volume. And then after 12 issues come out, which are compiled into 2 volumes, those 2 volumes are compiled into one book. So because they just finished the first story across 24 issues, you'll need to either buy all 24 issues, or 4 volumes, or 2 books in order to read through this one collection, which is what this complete story is called. And lastly, down the road when Skybound's released a bunch more collections in this universe, they will then compile those into a supersized comic called a compendium. Keep in mind that most of these terms mean something entirely different for the older IDW comics, which works out well enough for me, since I'd sooner be caught dead than being able to afford them anyways. Most people tend to buy their comics in volume form. It's kind of the happy medium. I bought mine for $16 each on Amazon, but their shipping isn't super protective, so even though it worked out fine for my copies, you may prefer to order from a dedicated comic site for better packing. And if you can't resist that sweet free Amazon shipping, just try to order multiple volumes at once so they're more likely to box them properly instead of just throwing one in an envelope. Amazon kinda does that a lot with everything, including the figures. So however much that matters to you depends on whether you just plan on opening the figure and dumping the box anyways. The question is, should you? Throw away the boxes. I mean, not keep the figure sealed. Don't be a freak. Open your figures. I was just saying, like, what kind of heartless animal would throw away this beautiful box? Well, I'll give it to you straight. If the figure that you've opened can't custom fit back into the box for storage exactly the way that it came, no matter how pretty that box may be, just toss it. These days, the resealable boxes make it kinda tempting to keep around and feel bad to throw away. But back in 2021, Hasbro made a brand-wide change to all the boxes, removing the plastic bed that held the figure in place. Ever since, they've gotten strapped directly to the cardboard, so putting them back in there is about as protective as just tossing them in a toy box. Don't get me wrong, that's a huge bummer, because there's really no cooler way to protect your figures, but without the protection, it is just a lot of useless space taken up when there's a much more efficient way to store them. So then what, right? Now you've got a naked figure without a proper way to store it, and on a less important note, you are now personally responsible for all 12 billion tons of atmospheric pollution coming out of China. So, shouldn't have wasted that box. But now I'm going to show you objectively the best way to store all your figures. I've been waiting for this. Oh, another fun fact. Anytime you see Hasbro mention a figure's transformation, you'll only ever see them use the word convert. Advanced conversion, self-converting. That's because they can't use the word transform as a common verb, or else they'll risk losing the Transformers trademark. The same way that you couldn't trademark eating as a company because it's such a common word that we use, they try to avoid making transform a common word. Okay, but seriously, nothing in this space is more underestimated than the importance of a proper storage method. You ever heard of plastic yellowing? Well, it's pretty self-explanatory, but it's one of the biggest issues that plagues white and gray plastic on Transformers over time. Some figures are more prone to it than others, but what most people don't realize is it is usually preventable. The 3 biggest causes of plastic yellowing is from what I call the 3 big H's: heat, humidity, and ultraviolet light, which is the sun. So storing your figures in a hot and steamy attic, or keeping them right next to a window, or literally living anywhere in Florida for any reason, it's a bad deal, okay? Whether you've been collecting your whole life or just getting started, a crazy amount of this will be solved if you just store your figures using this method. Every major department store sells some type of small bubble wrap roll. I get mine at Walmart for $5, but you can get them for even cheaper on Amazon, and it's way more protective than paper or foam. My basic rule of thumb is to almost always store the figures in alt mode. For the most part, this will be the mode that they take up the least amount of space in, they look the tidiest, and be the most durable. Also, as a bonus reason, whenever you come back to a figure that's been in storage for a while, trying to relearn that transformation from vehicle mode to robot mode is always a lot more forgiving than vice versa. Once you do this, you're going to cut a piece of bubble wrap wide enough to just bend around the ends of the figure, like a present. Make sure that soft bubbly side is facing towards the figure to protect it, but also because it gives us the smoother side to label with a Sharpie in a minute. Don't forget the accessories, and if they can't store inside the figure, just pile them beneath it. Sometimes you gotta get creative with partial transformations in order to fit oversized weapons in the bundle, but it'll work as long as both sides are covered when you roll the sushi. Use a little piece of name brand Scotch packing tape to seal each side. It sounds kind of specific and overkill, but take it from me, regular crafting tape won't hold the bubble wrap over time, and for some reason every other brand of packing tape falls apart or comes unstuck eventually. Scotch is the way to go. Tape it up, grab a Sharpie, and write down the year that the figure came out, the toy line it's from, and the full figure's name. Labeling this exact information will be super helpful as time goes on, especially the year, because that's the first thing that you'll get foggy on, yet the most important part to remember when you organize these into bins. So, let's talk about those bins. After 10 whopping years of cycling through more bin varieties than should be acceptable by the American Constitution, I have found the one truly superior bin that you'll come to love above all other storage. I call it the Flat Handsome. turns out that standard size bins are way too heavy to deal with once they're full of figures, and trying to grab anything past the first 2 layers gets old real fast. But even other flat bins that I've used are way too long, way too expensive, whatever the crap this money laundering scheme is. And watch out for this base level Walmart bin that'll steal your heart with promises of low prices but then reward your substantial investment with snap-on lids whose friction-based locking handles fail to do exactly that once they've been slightly warped against the weight of one other bin. In summary, I call it the flat ugly. In contrast, the flat handsome is robust, looks nice, can handle plenty of stacking weight, allows you to see what's inside from any angle, including the top. It can be divided into sections, it's tall enough to hold any retail size class while being short enough to fit under a bed, and the locking handles are satisfying and secure. They are on the pricier side at $10 a bin, but this simply means we get to pretend it's the reinstated core class. Welcome back, little buddy. These are by far my favorite bins to store my bubble-wrapped figures in, and if you don't have that many figures yet, you could just toss them into one of them neatly and be on your way. But once you get enough to need multiple bins, you'll want to start organizing them by year. Grab that good old trusty Scotch packing tape, tear off a lengthy strip, and then fold the very end of that piece in on itself to make it easily removable whenever you feel like it. Apply one piece to the end and another to the top. On the tape, write down the year for the batch of figures that you'll keep in this bin, followed by the names of their toy lines. If you're like me and you collect figures from every continuity, I like to keep 2 separate bins each year for the movieverse and then generations. My movie bin is strictly for live action figures, obviously, while my Generations bin kinda gets divided into sections for just about everything else, like Age of the Primes, SS86, and even some stray in-betweeners like Gamer Edition figures. And because I have been cutting back on Hasbro figures so much recently because of the prices, each bin tends to last multiple years now, in which case I just add that additional year to my tape label if January comes around and there's still space in the bin. I almost forgot to mention, there's always gonna be those accessories that you forget to roll up in the sushi roll or you find like right after you put the whole thing away. And for that, I have this little plastic 3-tier drawer. One of them's the Movieverse accessories, and then the other one is the Generations accessories. And this used to be a little tiny plastic bin, but it gets bigger every year because I get more accessories. For any of the older Hasbro figures that I can put back in their packages with the plastic bed, I love having those visibly organized up in like a closet shelf because they're so sick looking, but if you need to tuck them away, use good old cardboard boxes. They have the straight walls up and down that don't slant inwards towards the bottom the way that plastic bins do. Where those bigger plastic bins do come in handy is for any of my large, intrusive, awkwardly shaped boxes that come with different third-party figures. Third-party figures are non-official Transformers made without Hasbro's licensing or legal approval. This means that they are all Chinese-based. That doesn't mean that they're crappier than the official ones though, it can actually tend to be the opposite. See, third-party companies can work without any budget limitations when designing and manufacturing a figure. They also don't care about children's interest or mass market appeal, which means that they can cater directly to the adult collectors with a lot of money. Third-party brands will never use trademark symbols like Autobot or Decepticon insignias, plus they'll give their figures some random title instead of just using the official name to avoid blatant infringement. These specific third-party companies design the figures themselves from scratch with original engineering. And that's the biggest distinction between a third-party company and a specific type of third-party company called KOs. That stands for knockoff, and third-party knockoff companies just steal Hasbro's existing figures and straight up reproduce them for less money with sometimes a little added paint or extra size. See, you thought that was Ironhide? Joke's on you. Real fans know that is walkie-donkey formation. So even though most third-party companies are still at risk of getting shut down by Hasbro if they get caught, it's the KO brands who directly steal Hasbro's designs along with the chunks of their buyer market who are especially fried. Now, where, ask ye, doth one find these so-called third-party figures? Well, I'm glad you asked, because it's time that we talk about online sellers. If you're a casual shopper glancing at these sites for the first time, you might have noticed that half of them look like they were designed by a sketchy Chinese dude in a ski mask, and the other better-looking half will charge you a house payment for the pleasure of ordering out of an American facility. Don't let this scare you back to Amazon though, because it turns out that not all American sites are overpriced, and not all Chinese ones want your home address for trade on the black market. You'll need to use both for very different use cases. Starting with American. If you live in the Americas and you want to buy a first-party figure, American sites are the place to order them. Because there's such a well-established distribution pipeline here, buying them from a Chinese seller is usually a waste of time and rarely any cheaper. Here's a list of some trusted American sites that I can personally recommend from positive experience, and side note, I don't personally take free figures or money from any of these stores. A list of some trusted American sites. So how about those sketchy-looking Chinese sites, right? What are those good for? Well, fancy schmancy third-party figures all day, baby. Buying from a Chinese site is usually the cheapest and often the only option. Shoyu Store is probably the most popular seller right now, and their shipping costs are practically non-existent. I've only ever used their site since I like it so much, and I can highly recommend them. Also not sponsored. By the way, a quick tip related to third-party figures. You might notice a lot of boxes with plastic trays can be kind of a pain to slide in the last half inch or so. This is because the jagged side of the tray is getting caught on the folded lip of the box. If you just get in the habit of flipping the tray upside down, that should solve most of your problems. Now, eBay kind of sits awkwardly between the Chinese and American sellers because they're a bit of both. eBay can be really great for specific uses, but only if you're careful and you know a few things. First of all, seller feedback means absolutely nothing on eBay. I cannot emphasize this enough. Many of the positive reviews are fake, and eBay literally allows any of your negative feedback to be removed if the seller issues even a partial refund without your permission. It's basically a pay-to-win review system. A quick rapid-fire update. I've been doing a whole bunch of digging and research on eBay, and apparently as of just recently, they're discontinuing the ability to remove negative feedback because the government recently passed a law preventing fraudulent practices in review systems. Go figure. But on the flip side of that, they're also implementing a new thing where if you don't leave a negative or positive review, eBay will automatically step in and submit positive feedback on your behalf. And this could literally change in an instant, and it's so difficult to find any information on this because eBay themselves stays so quiet about everything. The only thing that you can trust is that you just can't trust it. Which brings me to number 2. Pay closest attention to the photos and the description of the product. I've learned to be skeptical of overly nice photography sets with perfect white lighting because you'd be surprised how much figure yellowing can be hidden with the right lights.
Sorry, nice try.
Plus, it can be super tough to spot dents on the older blister packaging, so learn to look at the figure in the photo instead of the photo itself. And when in doubt, message the seller and ask. They'll be honest, because if they aren't, they know that they're bound by eBay's money-back guarantee. Next up, never buy anything that doesn't have eBay's money-back guarantee. Whether or not the seller accepts returns doesn't actually matter as long as it has eBay's backing, which luckily most listings do, because it holds the seller accountable for getting the item to you in the exact condition that they promised. Otherwise, eBay will strong-arm them into giving you a return label. And they will. I've had to use it many times. See, scammers have gotten pretty subtle, and they know that 90% of buyers won't bother correcting an issue if it's just basically good enough. So don't be shy when they send you a figure that has a broken seal even though it was listed as unopened, or when they conveniently forget to mention in the description that the entire figure smells like a 90-year-old chain smoker because it was caught in a house fire. Yes, they knew. Yes, they hoped you wouldn't notice. And yes, they usually play dumb and have a cute little story to convince you that they had no idea, which you'll be tempted to believe until you've heard it 10 times.
Okay, well, point number 4, apparently eBay also deletes older messages. Anything older than 6 months. That'd have been awesome to know. There goes a whole lot of screenshot proof that I had with a lot of scummy people. Thanks, eBay.
Lastly, eBay should really only be used to shop for older or used figures. In most countries, it's not the place to get current and upcoming Hasbro figures. You'll see plenty of those listed for above retail price and then occasionally below it with the shipping jacked up to compensate and make it look cheaper than it is. And all of these sellers, dear friend, are called scalpers. But even they can only dream of achieving the unforgivable status that belongs to figure swappers. Figure swapping is when someone buys a new figure and then returns it after swapping it out with something much less valuable that they had lying around. It goes right back on the shelf where it induces a false sense of joy within every collector and child who initially believes that they've spotted their most anticipated figure. I've heard plenty of people calling figure swappers thieves, but I prefer to keep it much more simple with something like unlovable scum of the earth. Here's another fun fact. One of the biggest misconceptions to reach every corner of the Bayverse fandom is the story about Revenge of the Fallen Devastator being so complex to design that it literally exploded a computer trying to render. Some people have even started saying it blew up multiple computers, and if it wasn't obvious, that is completely false.
Like, sometimes computers can explode, can they not?
No.
What actually happened was it took multiple computers to render each scene, and eventually one of the computers froze up during a render.
When I loaded the whole entire creature all at once, my machine actually completely froze and had a total meltdown.
A tech specialist looked at the computer and told them that the motherboard was dead because of the processing overload. As a joke, the crew made a comedy skit about it in the behind-the-scenes segment.
Derek, can you open up GF170?
Which, for some unholy reason, fans took 100% literally and stamped under every comment section the internet has ever seen. So the moral of the story is to always fact check information that you hear around the fandom, no matter how much you may trust the source. You'd be shocked how much of it is fabricated or unintentionally misconstrued. Something I hate more than anything is getting a new figure with a bent accessory, usually because of this soft rubbery plastic material, so here's how you fix it. Grab a small pot and fill it with water. Put it on the stove with the heat turned on high, and wait till it comes to a boil so you can pull the pot off. Dip the accessory in the water for a good 15 seconds while the heat softens it, then take it out and gently bend it back into its correct position. It's not a bad idea to overcorrect the bend by a little while you hold it in place for a solid minute. Once it's cooled down, put it in the freezer for a while, and if you're straightening that object, lay something heavy on top of it. And when it's over, voila, no harm done to the paint. Oh, and speaking of paint, a figure's paint job is often called a deco, and stickers on a figure are called decals. If you call them decals, you're dead to me. But this is why you'll often hear people calling certain figures redecos or repaints. That's just what it's called when Hasbro takes an existing figure and repaints it in some way, often into a different character. A remold or retool is the same idea, just taken a little bit further by tweaking parts of the sculpt instead of just a paint job. Now, a lot of popular department stores like Target and Walmart will sign deals with Hasbro so that they can be the only ones to sell a certain figure, which makes that figure a store exclusive, and those exclusives are often repaints or remolds. For example, a few years back, Target's exclusive line was called Buzzworthy Bumblebee, and aside from being possibly the dumbest name in history, it gave us a lot of repaints over the course of several years. That's not always the case though. Occasionally, one of these stores will sign an extra pricey contract that gives them a brand new figure. Most collectors hate these because it means they'll be much harder to get their hands on. Good morning, and welcome to the humble town of Touchy Topicsville. I've gathered you all here today so we can address one of the biggest curiosities that looms over the heads of many fandom residents, and especially newcomers. Between all the countless TV shows and movies and comic book series, it's only natural for a lot of people to wonder, how are they linked together? And if so, which ones are considered canon to the franchise? If you're here from another franchise like Star Wars or Marvel, this is probably in your head the clearest question that you could ask. So I'm actually going to give you an equally clear answer. There is none. There is no official canon, there's no main timeline, and least of all, any connective tissue tying each media together. As weird as it sounds, even the first G1 continuity didn't define the rules for most things. We can't even agree on how Transformers are born, or why Bumblebee was named after an Earth bug long before discovering Earth. And every few years, a new piece of Transformers media might come along and take a stab at explaining one of these things, like deciding that Bumblebee was originally called B-127 before landing on Earth, but since the franchise was around for 35 years before that, everyone knows that wasn't the reason for most of that time, because there was no reason. As a matter of fact, the few events that we do consider to be canon are often ones that got told in one story with no other version to say otherwise, and if another one came along that did, we wouldn't consider either one definitive anymore. After the first couple live-action movies did really well back in 2010, Hasbro themselves tried to establish a working explanation that tied multiple existing and upcoming shows together with the movies and games. They called this the aligned continuity, and at its core, it was basically just a brand-sanctioned fanfic that was retroactively written to try and connect a bunch of unrelated media. And even they couldn't make any sense of it all before they just dropped the idea. And nobody can even blame them. The TV shows contradict themselves on an episode-to-episode basis, and the live-action movies are so scattered that even the producers and director couldn't agree on whether the recent films were reboots or prequels, because they were both, or neither, whichever one made the most financial sense after the box office reports came in.
The box office is coming in. This is a financial bomb.
It's actually really simple. Bumblebee's 87, we're 94, Michael starts in 2007.
And that's literally how this franchise works. The funniest part of Transformers fiction is that almost every fan theory you'll ever hear to analyze a story beat or character appearance is probably more well thought out than anything the writers came up with while making it.
Starscream's head, ladies and gentlemen.
Someone will say it's movie mistake that his head was blew up piece by piece, but if you look closely, the welding marks is the indication that someone rebuilt it.
There's some good stories and a lot of fun things to watch from the past few decades, but unlike Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter, Transformers was literally a franchise made exclusively for young children at the start. So it's been built on that simple, uncomplicated foundation that adult fans have kind of spent the last 40 years trying to rectify. And honestly, go nuts if that's what you're into. There's plenty of headroom and a lot of really cool things that have come from doing that.
The yellow that flowing together with his energon will show the time when he spin and remove the bullet.
But for anyone straight-faced, in all sincerity, looking for the answer to how it all comes together, it doesn't. That's the honest truth. Michael Bay decided to put that line and that explosion in that movie scene because he thought it looked cool. That character can be seen in the background after dying 10 episodes ago because the animators forgot. I'm not going to sugarcoat it and pretend that's the beauty and charm of this franchise because frankly, just about all of us would really like to see them get their act together and give us some high quality, consistent entertainment for a change. But with that in mind, I will say, we do get a lot of freedom to only see whatever parts of the story we want to. When everything and nothing is canon, the big studios don't really have much of a hand in ruining things for us, no matter how bad some of the media might get. I mean, I genuinely always felt bad for the Star Wars fans who have to cope with the sequels being canon, or any of the Game of Thrones fans after season 7 and 8 came out. These franchises often thrive and suffer by the quality of their content, understandably because that's what established it in the first place, as opposed to Transformers, which may be one of the few brands that people stick with because of the concept beyond anything else. We love giant robots that turn into cars. Or, something like it. When you show up to the MCU, you've got 1,000 movies and twice that many TV shows to watch just for catch-up homework. And that's great and all, but here, I don't know, grab a toy, have a seat, watch whatever you want. Unless you want it to be, it's usually not that deep. But it is a lot of fun. And I think that is the beauty of Transformers. by far the jankiest setup I've ever had.